Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. We are content experts. Let your voice be heard. Welcome to another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. Again, Voices, visionaries offering information with clarity, expertise, and substance. And today we have another special guest, Mrs. Haydee Lee Scott.
Hi.
Thank you for agreeing to be a part of the show. Miss Haydee Lee Scott and I, Mrs. Haydee Lee Scott and I,
That's right.
We've gone back. We know each other for quite a long time now. Done a lot of work in the community with herself and her husband, Mr. Isaac Scott. And again, I thought it would be a very good idea to bring her on the show, especially since she's such a force in the community, a leader, an advocate, especially for women's rights and as it relates to improving and healing our communities. So, without further ado, I usually read the bio, but I think that, her work speaks for herself, and I'd like to just turn it over to Mrs. Scott right now. So how are you feeling today?
I'm doing very good, thank you.
You doing good?
I am.
Well, it's 2019.
It is, whoop whoop.
It's the new year, and
Yeah.
among the things that are happening in the new year, as well as last year, is advocacy,
Yeah.
and the importance of our voices being heard, especially as it relates to women's rights, women's empowerment. And I, for one, am fascinated by voice. I'm fascinated by stories, and I'm fascinated about narrative. And I think it's important for us to share our narrative.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, can we hear a little bit about your narrative? Your upbringing.
My narrative.
Where are you from originally, and how did that community, how did that neighborhood influence the woman you are today?
So that's a very loaded question. I'm from East Harlem. I was born and raised. Shout out to East Harlem. I'm an Afro-Latin woman, and just in thinking about that question, how it impacted me as the woman I am today, it taught me resilience. I grew up with a lot of lack in my family, and lack in every single area, and dysfunction in the household. The education was really not the best. Just as I was growing up, I really got the opportunity to take a look at what that is and what that means in our community. So I'm a person that I do not like to see injustice happen. And so that really propelled me to really take a look at my life, my personal life, and take a look at my community and to really understand what was happening. So I developed this program called Thyself first. And it's a woman empowerment initiative. I focus on self-love and mental health. I understood that was something that I was lacking in my life, and I actually suffered from depression. And that was something that, wasn't always fun to talk about. It wasn't a very good experience, but I managed to muster up the strength to learn some tools in my life, to really step out in faith and to truly live in purpose, which is to empower other women.
So step out in faith, and I want to get to faith because I understand that faith is a very important part of your life. And oftentimes we live in this space where people oftentimes complain about the problem. Injuries, this person's not doing this person's not doing that. But very few people take it upon themselves to step out in faith and say that I'm going to be this advocate, I'm going to be this change agent. What was the deciding factor that told you that you had the power to be that change agent?
I love that question, and I love answering that question because it is absolutely God. I am a believer in Jesus Christ, and I shout it out loud because it really has been what has kept me grounded within myself and my work to be able to give and love and understand. And I think that's the key when we're talking about problems, right? It's people really not listening and understanding what really is going on. So just something as simple as listening really can go a long way in terms of understanding.
So listening, as a man, You know, fellas, I don't want to go there, but I have to keep it real. You know, especially since you mentioned God and you mentioned listening, and oftentimes our partners, our wives, our girlfriends, our families often request that we listen.
Yes.
As opposed to sometimes fixing it and wanting to jump out and fix it, especially in light of what we're seeing in the news. There's a lot of things that we're hearing on the news, like, you know, what's happening with R. Kelly. I don't want to really get into that, but, you know, had someone listened, some of these things may not have happened. Had men listened, the issues that are prevalent in the community as it relates to women may not be so prevalent. So what are the things that you believe that men can do? And I'm listening right now. What are some of the things that men can do to listen more to what women are saying about injustice, sexism, misogyny, and all these other things that are prevalent in our community, domestic violence? What are some things that we can do to listen?
I think that's the first step, just to be present and listen, right? When we're thinking about all of these other issues of domestic violence and all of these things, men have to get an understanding of how that really affects women mentally, right? Those experiences are brushed off in our community, like, you know, she'll be okay. You know, she looked like she wanted it, kind of thing, you know? And so I think just being present and listening, and truly listening and understanding, I think that's really the first step. Yeah, that's my answer.
Listen, I'm here. And I feel that very important for us to articulate that.
Yeah.
You know, I do a lot of work as it relates to domestic violence. I work with men who are alleged to have battered women, abused women on a number of levels. And some people, you know, it's like, oh my God, why do you do this work? And one of the things I say is, these men are there. In some cases, they're not arrested, they're not removed from our communities, but they're there. So it's very important for us to at least provide some kind of direction and restructuring in their lives. And part of what I stress to them is to listen. So we often bring women who have, you know, overcome certain adversities into the room and actually have them speak. And I tell my participants that at this point, listen. Hear what women are saying, showing videos and showing different things.
That.
So this is some of the things that we can do as advocates, especially as men in the community.
And can I just interrupt you? I just love that you said that, because we often hear about the women and how they're battered, right? But we're forgetting about the men as well, not taking away from what we face as women, but also, you know, that the men are struggling, you know. We're both struggling, you know, and we're doing things to each other to hurt each other. And I think when I think about mental health, you know, I often look at, when I think about domestic violence, I also think about the core of all of these issues being mental health. Right? So for me, in my mind, all of these, you know, issues and isms that we have really go back to who you are as a person. What do you think? And how are you understanding the world around you? And is it healthy or is it not healthy? And if it's not healthy, what are we doing to really bring families together and bring communities together and bring hearts together and bring yourself centered? We don't, you know, we don't think about that, right? It's like the mushy stuff. You know, you say love and, you know, we don't even know what that means. We use it so interchangeably. We say, oh girl, we love your hair. We love pizza. You know, we love these things. But love is action, right? Love is action. So to say, what do I want to say? I'm gonna leave it there. Love is action. And I think people, they just don't get it.
Listen,
they don't get it, but we here.
But listen, we're listening. The viewers are listening.
We here.
And you know, you mentioned Love Thyself and the organization that you started. What were some of the things that prepared you, in addition to your lived experience from the community? What are some of the other positions, the other you know, areas that you worked in to be prepared to do this work that you're doing today as the head of an organization, especially in empowering women and men who may want to do it and not know or not have the skills or the direction? What are some of the things you've done personally?
I think the first thing I can say is lived experience, right? I think when you live something, it gives you a different perspective and understanding and compassion for the work that you're doing. And you're the first person really to create change. Let's just say that right there, right? I used to be an educator. I taught preschool and kindergarten. I taught literacy, and I was a family service coordinator at Lutheran Social Services. So I started to work in the classroom, but because I couldn't really help the children in the classroom, because of the families were going through all of this mess, right? So in order to help the child holistically, right, I had to step outside the classroom and help the families to really take care of those children. So that was my point of view with that. So, and then after that, I decided to do my own thing because there's a lot of red tape and mess that goes with the not-for-profits that I was working with. Unfortunately, it was my observation that they're not providing the services that they say. Yeah. So I am an artist, and I do not like restraints. Yes. I do not like restraints. I choose to live my life by my standards. Yeah. And if I could not do that in a space where I had so much to give and so much to bring, then I had to remove myself and bring that to my community because it deserves that.
Yeah, powerful stuff, powerful stuff. I liken what you're doing to being you mentioned art and being an artist. I liken it to being a musician who decides to work for a huge label but has all these restraints. And then the artist that goes independent and is able to freely do the work and put the work on.
I'm an independent artist.
You're an independent artist, and I definitely understand. So, Love Thyself.
Yes, sir.
The name. Why that name? What was the importance of putting that message out facing to the world?
So I'm going to tell you what it means, right? Love thyself first. So love is God, right? And so loving yourself, loving and honoring the spirit within yourself first, right? In order to overflow on other people, in order to serve other people, in order to help other people, right? Yeah. But initially it didn't all start that way, right? I didn't get the understanding of what the name meant until I started to do it. Right? Oftentimes we're stopping ourselves from doing something because we don't have all the answers, and that's not really how real life goes. And so, anyway, therefore, a lot of people, don't really complete what they want. But it started with an event. I had an event. It was called a Women's Celebration. Isaac and I my husband and I worked on that event, and we were initially just looking for some place where he had these greeting cards that he worked on, and he had just finished his first the Confined Arts, and we were on this buzz.
Shout out to Haydee Lee Scott,
yes,
by the way.
I love my husband. But so he needed this space, and I said, well, I want to do an event, but I wasn't really clear on what I wanted to do yet. So he was so supportive, and we just got together and we created a women's celebration. And I love putting events together. I didn't know that was the beginning of my creativity. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Listen, shout out to you guys, because I had an event.
Okay.
I want to say 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And you guys actually was instrumental in making that event a success. We utilized art, paint, food, and it was very successful. So
I appreciate you for having us.
Listen, I appreciate you guys for being a part of the event, and I've also had the pleasure of participating in a number of events that you guys have done.
Yes,
so
you do poetry.
Yes. So don't listen. So with respects to the work that you're doing, I know you use art, right? Mm-hmm. Art as a means for healing and developing healing spaces and workshops. Tell us about those workshops and what happens in those workshops.
So much happens in those workshops, right? So I use art because it's a form of expression, and it's a platform where I can meet individuals and individuals can meet me, right? We're often lost in our own ideas, in our own beliefs. So art just has been like a playing field,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like, all right, we're gonna do this. We understand where we are. Let's move forward. So I have a number of workshops. I have one called Say Yes and one called I Am. And there's another one that I do in event fashion. It's called Rock Your Dreams, right? Rock your dreams. Let's rock them things out. So Rock Your Dreams is a vision board experience where, I'll have artists come out and they'll perform. I'll have vendors come out, and it will be women entrepreneurs, right? Because my platforms are all about empowerment. So if it's a woman who just started her cupcake business out of her house, here's a platform where you can sell your stuff and other people can get to know. And not only that, I will help you with getting your business cards or whatever it is that you need to make yourself successful, right? But in that space, in that particular Rock Your Dream space, we're creating vision boards. We're talking about manifesting. What is it that you truly desire in your heart? We don't really have time and space to really think about these things because we're always such in a rush. And specifically, us women in urban communities, if you want to name it that, we're always taking care of someone else. Yeah. We never have time. For a lot of things. That's what I've found in my groups, that a lot of women just do not have time. So I pride myself in providing that time, because that's really my service, providing that time and space for you to really take a look at what you want to do in your life. So, the form of art that I use in that space is collaging, and so I bring out a few materials, some cutouts, some empowerment words, some scriptures, and I allow you to just explore what attracts you, from that image. Let's take a look. We'll go through some exercises. Is it forgiveness that's blocking, your blessings? Is what what I say? Is or is it just your mindset? Is it the the negative self-talk? Like, what is it from stopping you from moving forward? Say yes is exactly what the title says. Say yes to your life. We're often saying no. We hear everyone else telling us no, that we're not good enough, right? They're not beautiful enough. So it's choosing to say yes. And we go through a lot of different exercises from financial empowerment, to just getting to know who you are. I talk about Christ in some of my workshops, and I say that openly because, you have to understand who you are. You have to understand that you're greater than what your environment is telling you than you are.
Absolutely.
And my other workshop, it's about the same. It's really the same, but I break it up in the sense of the I am. It's really more focused on self-identity and giving you the space to figure that out.
So speaking of spaces and speaking of creating that opportunity for individual and minds to come together, I think that's why V.O.I.C.E.S was created, and your voice is definitely a strong voice in the community, a strong voice in Harlem, a strong voice of women empowerment. What are some things that we have to look forward to from you and your organization in 2019 and beyond?
We're very excited about 2019. So we are going to be holding healing circles, monthly healing circles in East Harlem, which I'm really excited about. It'll be a little more consistent than having just workshops, partnering with different organizations to have my workshops, because women are saying, what are we doing in between, right? And so to help with consistency and being that partner with, I'm partnering up with these women, right? I'm like your partner in life until you don't need me anymore. Until you don't need me no more, right? And, I'm okay with that. So just providing those circles. We have a women's celebration, our yearly conference, coming up in May. It's usually around Mother's Day weekend, actually always around Mother's Day weekend. So we have that to look forward. I'm working on an event with Isaac in regards to the stigmas, women and the stigmas that are attached, right? So there's a few events coming up, just stay close. We have a few things coming up. But ultimately, one of my goals is to open up a health community center in East Harlem. And that is what I'm working towards, because I really recognized we have a lot of health community centers that are just like doctor's offices. And that's not really helping the community. And that's not really taking a closer look at our mental health issues and how that really can help lower all of these issues that we're seeing, all these symptoms that we're seeing in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the work that you're doing is much needed in our community, and I applaud you for the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. I applaud you.
Can you leave us with some final words, final thoughts for our viewers?
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
Learn to love yourself. That is so important. We're always talking about, you know, everything, like all of these issues, all of these problems. To learn to love yourself first, dare to step out in faith, and believe in purpose. Believe in purpose.
You heard it here first. And for the fellas out there, let's listen, all right?
Listen.
Let's listen more, talk less, and you know, and understand that this issue of, you know, women's health, women's empowerment is something that is important for all of us to take part in, especially as men. We can be thought leaders in helping to support the movement as well. Again, this has been another episode of Voices. I'm your host, Keston Jones. In the description of this particular video, you'll hear more about how to get in contact with Mrs. Haydee Lee Scott and the wonderful work that she's doing. What are you doing in your community to help support not only women but your particular issue? Let's hear from you. Please comment. Please, you know, like, subscribe, and share. Peace.